Minecraft, GTA, Roblox. These are just a few of the games that all share one thing in common. They are absolutely huge on YouTube. It's no secret that content creation completely changed video game culture. Games aren't just played, they're also watched by millions of people around the globe. And one of these games, while nowadays is a little more obscure, played a huge role in making gaming content the juggernaut it is today. A game that's held up almost entirely by community-made content and produced some of the most iconic and funny moments in YouTube history. And that game was Happy Wheels. But another game that did the same thing was a special little sandbox game known as Garry's Mod. Oh my god. Garry's Mod, or GMod, is a game that I don't feel gets the recognition it deserves online. For a period of time, it was the go-to game for content creators wanting to mess around with friends, due to it basically having infinite replayability because of the massive amount of community-made content. This game was, and still is, revolutionary, and without it, we simply wouldn't have things like Skibbity Toilet. Okay, maybe it isn't that good. But how did this bizarre sandbox game become so successful? How did it become so popular with content creators? And who the hell even is Garry? Well, today I want to give this game its flowers I feel it deserves, for both changing what it means to be a video game, and for still being just as fun to this day. This is why Garry's Mod is timeless. In 2004, Garry Newman, the founder of Facepunch Studios, began development on a mod for Half-Life 2 that would basically be a playground to test out Valve's new game engine called Source. Now, Garry wasn't some business entrepreneur trying to make a viral game. He was just purely messing around with Valve's engine, and ended up creating a sandbox where you could spawn props, pick them up, and throw them about simply just for the hell of it. There wasn't a story, or levels, or a goddamn skill tree. It was purely just a space to do whatever you wanted inside the Source engine. And on December 24th, 2004, Garry casually uploaded a very small file titled Garry's Mod 1 to the Facepunch forums, and then probably had a cup of tea. That's right, he's British. But then, something unexpected happened. People started playing it. This mod, that at the time was extremely bare bones, started to get a pretty high amount of traction, as it turns out, it was actually really fun. It was goofy, and simply the physics alone were enough to keep people interested. And as more and more people started downloading and experimenting with this mod, Garry would update it to add new features, such as new maps, vehicles, an improved spawn menu, and new tools to mess around with. Just simple, fun stuff, which goes to show that Garry's vision for this game was never business-based. It was pretty much just a love letter to the Source engine and game development as a whole. And remember, this was all the way back in 2004. There weren't nearly as many examples of indie developers putting out stuff like this as there are nowadays, especially for free. He could have stopped development there, and Garry's Mod probably would have still gone down as one of the most iconic indie games of the early 2000s. But on October 28th, 2005, everything changed, as Garry's Mod received an update that added Lua scripting. Now, don't worry, I know a lot of you guys are currently thinking, oh my god, I have no idea what that means. So let me explain it very simply. You could now mod the mod. The addition of Lua to GMod quite literally completely transformed what the game was even about. It went from a simple sandbox game with limited tools to an entire platform for pretty much whatever the world could come up with. Custom weapons, tools, entities, even full-on new game modes like Melon Racer. The future is here. GMod was only getting better and better, and because of this, it caught the attention of a certain digital game storefront called Steam. You know, simply just the creators of the game GMod was a mod for. Just casual stuff. And they made a deal with Garry that GMod would no longer just be a Half-Life 2 mod, but a standalone game that could be purchased from the Steam store for $10. And ever since that day, Garry's Mod went from a pretty niche sandbox game that was only really interesting to fans of Valve games, to a worldwide sensation that you couldn't escape online. With so many new eyes on GMod, that meant that custom community-made content was being made in abundance. And with the introduction of the Steam Workshop a little later on, that meant that downloading mods was as simple as one button press. One of the most iconic community game modes that came from this was called Prop Hunt, a mode where players had to hide from seekers around different maps disguised as props. And this led to Prop Hunt becoming featuring an extremely well-known game mode that to this day continues to be remade in different games like Call of Duty and Fortnite. So there are probably people out there that didn't know that it originated, or at least was made extremely popular, by GMod. Another extremely popular mode was called Trouble in Terrorist Town, or TTT, which was one of the first iterations of the concept most known as murder mystery, which has evolved over the years to bring us games like Among Us. These are just a few examples of some of the ways this game has affected gaming culture, and I really feel like it deserves more credit than it currently gets. A lot of people just view Garry's Mod as the silly sandbox game where you can give people funny faces, but in reality, without it, I feel like we'd be missing 25% of what video games are nowadays. Hold your horses, MewZe, because before I move on to the next point, I need to talk about today's sponsor, Wand. When it comes to single player games, for example Elden Ring, my favourite thing to do is mess around. And sometimes I simply suck too bad to do that. Well, that's where Wand comes in. Wand is an app that allows you to fully customize your experience playing single player games and lets you play the game your way. Wand automatically scans all the games you have on your system, and now all I've got to do is hit Alt-W, and I'm given a huge selection of fun and useful features. Not only can I do silly wacky stuff like fly around, but I can also access a map that shows me where pretty much everything is, which I must say is a lot easier than digging through the game's wiki. Plus, if I wanted to challenge myself, I could even modify the game to make it harder by increasing enemy damage. I will not be doing this. With support for over 3,500 games, including some of my favourites like Hitman 3 and Plants vs Zombies, I couldn't recommend Wand more if you want more customization in your single player games. If you've been using Wand free, there's no better time to upgrade. Use my link wand.gg/MewZe or hit the link in the description, then enter WandBF25 before December 1st to get the offer. And since it's Black Friday week, they're offering 25% off Wand Pro, the lowest you'll see all year. Normally it's $70, but during Black Friday it's $52.50, which is less than most games out there. Thank you Wand for sponsoring. Now, back to the video. Not only were some truly iconic game modes created through Garry's Mod, but the amount of player-made items, custom models and maps meant that the sandbox element of this game was truly infinite. Lightsabers, Nyan Cat, Minecraft, portals, Ferraris, playable pianos, Five Nights at Freddy's, vaping, The Backroom, Spider-Man web swinging, Kermit the Frog, Prone Mod, a working TARDIS, gambling, iShowSpeed, trampolines, and yes, don't worry, tactical nukes. This game is without a doubt the most extensive customizable sandbox game of all time, and if you say no, it's Minecraft, I will be outside your house promptly. Because it was so easy to make a mod and share it with the world, to this day there are still new add-ons being made. The fact that through the Steam Workshop you're able to simply click on a mod and immediately have it installed means that you don't have to deal with any of the hassle that comes with game modding. And I think that's something about this game that gets taken for granted. If you had to go to some external website, download a file that probably has a virus and put it in some specific folder on your computer just to get the Peanut Butter Gamer player model, I don't think this game would have become nearly as popular as it did. Because of this accessibility and the pretty much endless content this game could produce, it was the perfect stage for content creators and became insanely popular on YouTube. Oh my god, why do British people say YouTube like that? Why do they say YouTube like that? Shut up. I don't think it's wrong to say that Garry's Mod is a game that I think has been watched a lot more than it's been played, and that isn't a bad thing. In its prime, this was the game to play on YouTube if you wanted to share funny, wacky gaming moments with friends. The most popular GMod gaming videos were undoubtedly from Vanos Gaming, and many of these videos have become truly iconic in YouTube history. But pretty much every popular YouTuber has videos playing GMod, whether it's PewDiePie 12 years ago or Jameski 3 months ago. And that's just more proof of this game being timeless. The fact that people are still able to make content through this game 21 years after it came out is absurd. Even if that was everything this game had to offer, it still would be regarded as a masterpiece. But it doesn't stop there, as not only was GMod a game, but it was also an animation program. People discovered that by utilizing the game's many posing tools, in-game cameras, and the infinite supply of custom models, this was the perfect game to make animated videos. Creators began posting seriously impressive animations using this game's engine, some of which have gotten tens of millions of views. From Kitty0706 to El Toro 64 Rust to SMG4. By using stop-motion animation, people were able to tell stories through this game. And many creators such as SMG and G4 have gained so much popularity through GMod that they've evolved into creating even higher quality animations with a full production team behind them. And obviously, I've got to mention that even though the animations themselves were made in a different program, Skibidi Toilet and its signature animation style is something that simply would not exist without GMod, and that's something that's now in Fortnite. Like, what? While yes, nowadays Gmod is not as popular as it once was, it's undeniable how much of an impact it's had on the online world. This game was truly a platform, and I think the reason it became such a successful one is that it wasn't trying to be. Nowadays, it feels like every game is trying to force itself to become more than a game, in a way that doesn't feel natural or genuine, with huge companies spending millions of dollars to try and convince people that their game isn't just a game, it's an experience. Whereas Garry's Mod was quite literally the opposite of that. It was made by one guy, a British one at that started off as a free mod he made as a side project and slowly evolved into one of the most recognisable and enjoyable sandbox games ever, without it even trying to. Garry Newman's success didn't come from a desperate attempt to, it came from him just making something he wanted to make. Nowadays, I think people have the complete wrong idea of how you can make something that actually matters to people, especially in the video game and online space. It feels like every week I see someone complaining about their game not being popular enough, only for it to be a stolen concept that doesn't even have an ounce of soul in it, or a YouTuber or streamer that's convinced they're shadow banned when they're just copying what everyone else is doing. And I don't blame them. As a YouTuber myself, it's difficult to not fall into the trap of creating content that works for other people, so why wouldn't it work for me? There's nothing wrong with being inspired by something, obviously. I mean, Garry's Mod was literally a mod for someone else's game. But there's a big difference between being inspired and having a lack of identity. So finally, in conclusion, that is why Valorant is a piece of shit video game. Thank you for watching. Leave a like on this video if you're Garry, and subscribe if you're Mod. And remember, there is absolutely nothing happening on this channel on December 6th, 2025. Nothing.